Welcome back to another episode of In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, CEO of academia.edu, and it's fantastic to have you with me today. I always look forward to digging into the latest thought-provoking research, and honestly, I love how these papers just make us stop and think, even if we don't always end up, agreeing or even understanding every angle. Academic work isn't a set of facts, it's a set of perspectives for us to engage with, not gospel. And that's especially appropriate given the subject of today's episode. Today, we're exploring a paper called Biblical Spectacle and Artistic Legacy, the Old Testament in Western Painting, written by Roland Keates, or Roly as he prefers. And let's jump straight into the core question. Why has the Old Testament, with its wild mix of drama, spectacle, and, let's be honest, some seriously complicated characters, why has it inspired so many iconic paintings in Western art? Why did Michelangelo, Titian, Caravaggio, Rembrandt, and loads of others use stories from Genesis, Exodus, and the historical and prophetic books as their pick of the narrative bunch? What is it about those old tales that keeps artists returning to them for hundreds of years? It's a good question, right? If you think about it, most people for much of Western history couldn't read. That's wild to imagine now with everyone glued to a screen all day, but back in Renaissance or Baroque times, art had a job to do. Paintings weren't just decoration or status symbols, they were teaching tools. Churches were basically open-air theatres, and painters turned Bible stories into visual drama, moral lessons, and sometimes opportunities to flex their creative muscles. So, what does Keates, again, not me, just the messenger here, what does Keates argue about all this? Well, his main point is that Old Testament stories provided a gigantic stage for artists to experiment with narrative complexity, emotional depth, and visual innovation, while also reflecting each era's theology and cultural norms. In other words, these artists weren't just copying biblical stories, they were reimagining them, shaping how entire societies pictured things like creation, sacrifice, or heroism. Let's make that concrete. Keates goes through big moments in the Old Testament and pairs each with iconic artwork. Example, Michelangelo's creation of Adam. You know that image, right? God reaching out, Adam reaching back. It's basically the symbol of divine-human connection now. But what's cool is how Michelangelo shrank the setting so that it's this charged, almost electric exchange. All eyes are on that near touch. And then you've got Titian's Adam and Eve, the seduction scene painted with lush colour, deep psychological tension. Even hundreds of years later, Thomas Cole's expulsion from the Garden of Eden mixes biblical tragedy with romantic landscapes. The mood, the emotion, wow, it just hits you. Then you get stories that dig into, like, human frailty. Cain and Abel, for example. Keates points out that artists such as Tintoretto really leaned into the violence and emotional turmoil, turning murder and mourning into these haunted, unforgettable images. And here's a random thought. I sometimes wonder if, like, these painters were working through their own sibling stuff, Not that I'm saying Tintoretto had a beef with his brother, just saying art is mysterious sometimes. Jumping ahead, when you look at big events like Noah and the flood, or the Tower of Babel, Keates highlights how artists use these to illustrate the themes of human hubris or despair. Bruegel paints Babel as a direct echo of the Roman Colosseum, like a reminder that every empire, no matter how ambitious, is just dust in the end. Is that comforting or kind of terrifying? You decide. Moving into the Exodus stories, Moses parts the Red Sea, plagues rain down on Egypt. These were just gold mines for visual drama. Artists like John Martin turn those moments into almost cinematic spectacles, right? And then, on a more intimate scale, Caravaggio's Sacrifice of Isaac is just wow, thick with psychological tension, the fear in Isaac's eyes, the confusion in Abraham's face, the desperate rush of the angel. Keates keeps saying, hey, this isn't just about storytelling, it's artists wrestling with big moral questions and existential dread. What's in this for you, the listener? Well, all this makes us look at art and maybe even scripture in a new way. These paintings shaped what generations imagined when they pictured, say, David and Goliath or the Garden of Eden. They handed down not just religious ideas, but honestly, cultural blueprints, role models, warnings, ideals of beauty and power and justice. Even if you're not religious, you're walking through museums shaped by these images, and whether you know it or not, absorbing some of these big ideas about humanity and morality. Kind of weird, but also kind of cool. So wrapping up, Keats's paper isn't saying there's a single way to read these paintings or that these stories mean one thing. It's more like, here are some lenses to look through. Here's how artists across centuries have wrestled with old texts and new questions. As always, academic research is a conversation, a chance to explore, reflect, and maybe, just maybe, see the familiar in a brand new way. Thanks for joining me today. If you like this, subscribe and let me know what kind of topics you want to hear more about. Until next time, this is In Depth with Academia. See you soon.